Pharmacist Ben.
What's going on, buddy? You got to work on that ending a little bit.
I gotta work on a bunch of things because on the channels it still has the title from Daily with Doc, and I changed everything. But at any rate, how are you?
I'm doing good. Good to see you. It's been a
Was
while. Been a minute.
Scottsdale a good trip for you?
Dude, Scottsdale is the desert. I took a walk. I made the mistake of taking a walk in the morning and I got a little lost. I swear I was going to pass out, man. I actually I actually hallucinated. I had a mirage.
It wasn't the
I
ayahuasca?
thought I saw water. I
It,
kept
it
thinking
wasn't the ayahuasca?
no, it wasn't it. The ayahuasca was 114 degrees.
Oh man.
It really is beautiful though. It's gorgeous, Scottsdale. I just couldn't live there.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Well, the Wallachs seem to like it.
Yeah, a lot of people like it. It's quite beautiful and new. I don't think you understand how old it is back east. It kind of, when you live back east, you just kind of assume that that's the way the world is. It's not. Back east is really old. You come out to Scottsdale and Phoenix and even Colorado. It's so new and fresh. The roads are new. The buildings are new. So it's a beautiful place to live. Scottsdale's a beautiful place to live too, but just hot as you know what.
All right. Well, I'm glad it was a good experience. I know that the new Rise and Restore is going to be a game changer for us all. So I'm looking forward to trying it. And what do you think about that?
It's a great new product, and it's really an example of what longevity is all about. Always looking for news, always upping their game. Kaizen, you ever hear Kaizen? Constant and never-ending improvement. It's a Japanese term, Kaizen. And longevity is always practicing Kaizen. And on top of that, Steve, who's kind of he's the formulator, the main formulator these days. He is, as I said in my talk, he's a lover of the molecule. And I'm a lover of the molecule. I call it the molecule. It's the collective molecule. Right? The vitamins, the phytonutrients, the minerals, the fatty acids, amino acids, essential nutrients. These are all molecules. And when you have a kind of an affection for the molecule and the structure of the molecule and how it relates to the functions in the body, it allows you, number one, to play as a formulator. And number two, it allows you to understand how to put things together so you can make really effective products. And that's one of my favorite things about longevity is they're always looking, I should say, we're always looking for new and powerful ways of putting these molecules together to make potent and effective products, to make potent and effective nutritional products so that people can stay healthy, reverse disease. And as I said in my talk, you don't have to be sick. We have this model, this paradigm of using longevity products when you have arthritis or autoimmune diseases or digestive problems or some kind of health issue. But really healthy people need to supplement too. Young people need to supplement too. And in fact, it's a lot easier to prevent health challenges than it is to try to reverse health challenges. So longevity products and the new longevity products and the longevity products that haven't been born yet are not just for folks who are dealing with health challenges. Of course, they'll benefit too, but also for people who are healthy and strong and young so they can stay healthy and strong and young.
Absolutely. Give and extend their life trajectory,
Yeah.
health, and
Yes. Longevity.
and
Longevity is decreasing. Well, how can that be with all we know about health and all the doctors we have and drugs and devices and protocols and hospitals and HMOs and insurance companies? How can it possibly be that our longevity is dropping? Something's definitely wrong, right?
something's
Cancer
wrong.
rates are increasing. I don't know if you heard all these latest crazy statistics. Cancer rates are increasing. Heart diseases, even though people are staying alive longer, heart diseases, incidences of heart disease are going up. And it's just, we're crazy sick. And it stands in relief and in contrast to the fact that we think we know so much about health, and we have so much attention is being paid to health, but not in the right way. Not in the right way.
Well, in that vein, you talk about folks, potentially recovering from these ailments, recovering from disease A or sickness B, and using nutrition to do so. My question today for you is, how can we recover from a life of fried foods. And, and what does,
More probably, why do we love fried food so much?
you
Why do
know,
we love fried food so much?
are you asking? Is that rhetorical?
Yeah, I'm asking, why do we love fried food so much?
You
Do you,
know,
in your
I
opinion,
work with you, so I know the answer.
what's the answer?
Well, we need fats and we love fats.
Correct. But what is it about fats and what is it about fried fats?
Well, you know
Interesting, huh?
what?
What is it about fats and fried?
Yeah, tell us, because I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, first of all, fats are nature's richest source of energy.
Hmm.
Fried fats are super high energy. Heated fats are super high energy. The body is a sucker for energy. It's all about energy. Really, everything that the body does comes from energy. So we are we are heat, like energy seeking machines. We seek energy and ways to get energy into our systems all the time. And this is our evolutionary heritage because there didn't used to be a lot of energy. You know, our main the main cause of suffering, the main cause of death for eons, thousands, millions of years, hundreds of thousands, millions of years, was lack of energy. And by lack of energy, I mean stuff that you put in your body that gets turned into energy. This is the body's main job, is to get energy from the environment to drive its chemistry, its biology. That's the body's main job. And that's why all of our health challenges are really the end result of some kind of defect or breakdown in the processing of energy. That's what the triangle of disease is all about. Really, the 2 points in the bottom of the triangle, the digestive system, the blood sugar system, represent breakdowns in how the body turns food into energy, either at the level of the digestive system or in terms of biochemistry at the level of metabolism. So metabolic syndrome, digestive health challenges, these are all problems with how we turn food into energy. So the body is always looking for energy. In nature or in the outside world, energy is represented by food. The highest sources of energy are sugar and fat. Protein has energy in it too, by the way, but it has it in a harder to obtain form, which makes it actually better in a way because it's more sustained release. That's why protein has a grounding effect. The energy that you get from sugar is so easy for the body to utilize that if you do too much, you get all jittery. Fat doesn't quite have that same problem, and fat is broken down a little bit slower than sugar. Not quite as slow as protein, but slower than sugar. So fat is a preferred form of energy, always. However, the fats that we use today for economic interests have been tweaked, manipulated, have been processed, heated. They've been just changed. They're not natural fats. We very rarely eat a natural fat, even if we cook our fat. You know, avocados, probably fatty vegetables that you eat, or fruits
Nuts.
that you eat without cooking. Nuts too, a little bit, but most people don't eat enough nuts, and most people roast the nuts, so they're heated. So raw nuts, yeah, raw nuts are good. It's not a lot of unheated fats I can't really think of too many unheated fats. Raw eggs,
Sushi.
raw milk, sushi, yeah. So there's not a lot though. Most of the fats we eat are cooked. And over the last 150 years, we figured out, or 150 years ago, we figured out how to take fat, as we talked this before, how to take fat and tweak it to the point where it can be sold. That's what Crisco is. When Crisco came out, it revolutionized the food business because that was the first time a fat, which human beings love, could be shipped and stored and left on the shelf and cooked and reused. And that kind of revolutionized food. And it's no accident that our health issues really started to accumulate and get worse as soon as we figured out this whole fat thing, how to turn fat into a commodity. Before that, fat was just lard. It was animal fat. You couldn't really get vegetable fat. By the way, vegetable oil requires a lot of high technology. In order to make your average salad oil or olive oil, you got to have these intense chemical processes, intense industrial chemical processing, either through intense pressure or solvents, a lot of chemistry. So our ingestion of fats really skyrocketed as soon as the Industrial Revolution kicked in, and our ability to process foods became very advanced. Before then, think about it, 200 years ago, how would you get fat? aside from just eating raw food or nut or lard or avocado or eggs. You really didn't. There was no oils. It was very difficult to get oils. You could cold press them, and that's what they did with olives, and other fatty fruits. But they're very expensive because you basically had to hand press them to get the oil out, and that was very labor intensive. So it was really expensive. When they figured out how to use solvents and industrial machines with high pressure, it dropped the price, and all of a sudden fats were everywhere because people couldn't resist fats. They became a very attractive economic commodity. And then when they figured out how to heat fats at high temperatures, and by the way, this whole idea of fat, the secret to fried foods, most of the fried foods we like, deep fried foods. What is deep frying? When you actually immerse something starchy into bubbling, boiling fat. That's what deep frying is, right? You take starchy stuff and you stick it into a bubbling cauldron of oil. The starchy foods, say potatoes, classic example, right? If you looked at a potato under a microscope, especially if it's sliced thin, you'll see lots of little squares, lots of little openings, like a honeycomb, right? When you dip a potato or any kind of starch, all starches have these squares in them, these honeycomb openings. It goes into the oil, the bubbling oil, and because of the nature of these artificial fats, they call them hydrogenated fats. You've heard that term, I'm sure. They have a tendency to cool very quickly, and when they cool inside the starch, you get this little tiny hard piece of fat, microscopic, inside a microscopic hole. And the accumulation, the composite of these microscopic holes and these hard fats is incredibly tasty. Incredibly. And when you crack it, it makes a sound like a potato chip, right? Mm-hmm. That's the end result. That sound and that tastiness. I'll tell you why it's so tasty in a moment. That crack and that tastiness is irresistible. And so now you can go to fairs around the country and you'll get deep fried Twinkies and deep fried Snickers bars, and they deep fry anything.
Turkey.
Deep fried turkey, right? There's a show called Carnival Eats. It's I like to watch these Food Channel shows. I don't know why. It's like I'm sort of a sadist. I like to see I don't know why I like to see it. It looks so evil to me, but I just enjoy watching it. And they deep fry all kinds of things. They don't have they're not embarrassed about it, not ashamed of it. They show you how they deep fry these things. And deep frying is irresistible. Now, what's the secret to deep frying? First of all, deep frying requires rapid cooling of a fat. And that's what's really cool about these hydrogenated fats is they cool and they solidify when they're cool. That's what Crisco is. Have you ever worked with Crisco? Ever used Crisco?
No, but I'm familiar with it from.
Crisco is a hard fat. They call it hydrogenated. Basically, they take a liquid fat and they pump it with hydrogen. That's where they get the term hydrogenation. Right? Hydrogenation has the effect of solidifying that fat, but it doesn't solidify it the way lard is solidified. Lard is a solid fat. It solidifies it in a very interesting way that allows it to be melted and resolidified consistently. You can do it endlessly, basically. You can melt it and resolidify it, and melt it and resolidify it. It has an ability to resolidify in a way natural hard fats don't. Lard doesn't resolidify. So it allows it to be reused. But even better, because it resolidifies when it cools, when you drop the potato, I'm using potato chips as an example, but you can take any starch. You can think of any starch, fried chicken, breadcrumbs or anything. When you drop it in the oil, the hot oil goes into the holes and then it resolidifies in the hole when the potato comes out of the oil. It resolidifies, and that creates a little tiny microscopic piece of fat, and the accumulation of these microscopic pieces of fats tastes delicious. The reason it tastes delicious is because of something called surface area. There's a restaurant here in Colorado. It was a chain of sandwich sub shops, sandwiches called Quiznos, and they made a ton of money. You know about Quiznos? They have back.
We used to have one here, yeah.
Okay, so they went out of business. They ended up being a lousy franchise. But what made Quiznos irresistible, and why do you know what made them irresistible? Did you ever eat a Quiznos sandwich?
I had a buddy actually was the manager at Quiznos, so
you would go there all the time, right? Back in the day, I would go there all the time. When I was young, I could eat anything I wanted to eat. Big old Quiznos tuna fish sandwich or roast beef sandwich, that was irresistible. What made Quiznos so irresistible? I'll give you a clue, so you can guess. What made Quiznos so irresistible was such a dramatic change or a dramatic improvement in sandwich making that Subway knocked them off. You know, Subway sandwiches, right? Subway knocked them off. So what is Subway's claim to fame now? There's no more Quiznos, so they don't have to worry about Quiznos. That was their main competition here in Colorado anyway.
Subway.
It was toasted bread. What
Hmm.
made Quiznos revolutionary and what made Quiznos so appealing to consumers and such a wonderful franchise, such a healthy business model, was toasting. And it became such a big thing that Subway had to do it too, because everybody's going to Quiznos because their bread was toasted. What does toasting do? Toasting creates little crevices in the bread. Those crevices, from a microscopic standpoint, have more surface area for your taste buds to contact. It's surface area. That's why slicing thin is always more delicious than slicing thick. When you slice something thin, you get more surface area. Surface area means more contact with the taste buds. Well, think about these microscopic holes in a potato or a corn or any kind of starch filled with holes, lots of little holes versus one big hole. If you have lots of little holes with lots of little pieces of fat, you get much more surface area than one big hole with one piece of fat. So you get a flavor explosion on your taste buds. And that's what deep frying does. It's a flavor explosion. You get all the taste, all the taste buds are contacted. That's why it's so irresistible and so delicious. And the fact that the fat is super high energy and human beings evolved to be heat-seeking missiles for fat adds to it. And then on top of all that, most of these foods are, because they're starches, break down into sugar. So you get sugar and fat. And bonus, they always put salt in there, and you get the three absolute flavors that nobody can resist: sugar, salt, fat. But because the sugar's a problem, right? The salt is probably that's not great either, because most of the time the salt is sodium, and our bodies evolved to hold on to sodium, and sodium is always in balance with potassium. Because we're getting so much sodium, our sodium to potassium balance is off, and potassium is responsible for energizing things. That's a whole nother problem. We can talk about that later. But what ends up happening is we not only get lots of fat, but we get lots of sugar with the fat. It's like a 1-2 punch. And it's not the kind of sugar that's good sugar. So you get the fat and you get the sugar, and not only just you have all of these this high energy. We talked about high energy before without the micronutrients. So you're flooding the body with energy. This is really the biggest problem we have in terms of health, if you want to break it down, is we're trying to get energy from a fire hose. Remember, the system is designed to like suck up energy in an environment where there's no energy. And now all of a sudden, over the last 100 years, 150 years, we've taken a situation where there's no energy coming out. Energy was coming into the body in droppers, like doop, doop, doop. And all of a sudden it's a fire hose. And you're flooding the body with energy like you're drinking out of a fire hose. And this is all of our health challenges are linked to the inability to process all of this energy. Our mitochondria are frying out. And once your mitochondria fry out, you hear a lot about mitochondrial medicine now, mitochondrial nutrition. The problem with mitochondrial, the issue with the mitochondria is the mitochondria are frying out because there's so much energy. The mitochondria's job is to take energy and turn it into something called ATP. So the body can use. The body can't really use energy. It has to turn that energy into adenosine triphosphate. Don't want to get into too much biochemistry, but this is what ATP is. Have you heard of the term ATP?
Well, we all took biology.
Okay. Well, no, not everybody. Don't be a smart aleck.
We all took bio, man.
Yeah, bro. Smart aleck. What is ATP? Mr. We all took biology. No,
well, I mean, I know the term. I didn't.
All right, you know the term. Okay, I'm teasing you. By the way, ATP is another mind-blowingly amazing molecule in the body. We talk about that sometime too. But the mitochondria's job is to take food in the form of little tiny pieces, fatty acids or sugar, little components of food, and turn it into ATP. That's what the mitochondria does. And it does this in this amazing way. But because we got so much energy coming into the mitochondria can't handle all that. So the body has a way of storing all that energy. It stores it in fat. And that's why we're all the starving obese. We got lots of fat, but we're not getting the nourishment that we need. So problem number one is the fat and the sugar give the body tons of energy. But there's another really bad problem with fat. And Doc's been talking about this for years. And we learned this in pharmacy school back in the 1980s. Fats are the molecules of inflammation and anti-inflammation. Anti-inflammation, inflammation are controlled and regulated by fats. That's how aspirin works, or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs like Motrin and naproxen. They all work with the fatty part of the body, the fatty chemistry, fatty biochemistry, lipid biochemistry. There's a guy not famous, but he's famous to biochemists named Revici. I forgot his first name, Revici. And he was talking about the importance of fats for cancer many years ago. How fats can be used to treat cancer, and distorted fats can be a cause of cancer. And he's right, because of this inflammatory component that fats have. Fats, good fats, bad fats. Now, what happens is when you cook a fat, you create these bad fats. You create these inflammatory fats. You throw off the body's inflammatory and anti-inflammatory balance. And this is what we're all doing. This is why you want to stay away from fried, processed, or heated fats. And this is what Doc's always talking about. They're the molecules of inflammation. And what's worse is you could think you're staying off from the French fries, but there's hidden places where these fats, these fried and distorted fats show up. One of the places I got this, this was from a hospital. A friend of mine was in the hospital and she was given this stuff.
Is that Ensure?
Yes, it's Ensure. And Ensure, what makes Ensure kind of milky, I don't know, I've never drank Ensure, but I've seen it. It's kind of milky and creamy, is fats, distorted fats. This thing is poison. Just look at the ingredient deck. And we feed it to our sick patients in hospitals. We feed it to our elderly in nursing homes. We feed it to our children. Baby formulas the same way. Baby formulas are composed of these processed and distorted fats. See how silly we are as a culture and how evil the economic interests are. That's why I say McDonald's, I tease people, but it's really true. McDonald's is not your friend. They should be regarded as the enemy. And because of these distorted fats, Ensure the same way. Baby formula the same way. Another place, check this out. You know where you get these processed, these little tiny fatty molecules that are not respected as inflammatory chemicals or molecules? Vaccines. And I shouldn't even say that because we're going to get cut off. Yeah, I better not say that word.
Sorry, another thing.
Got to cut that. Yeah, I've already got 2 strikes on me. But they don't even talk about that. And especially the latest one, which shall remain unnamed. That thing was wrapped around in fat, in distorted processed fat. And nobody talks about that. That's why I say you got to be very careful with what you inject. Have you ever heard that? Anybody out there listening, have you ever heard that you're injecting processed, distorted fatty molecules, which are the key molecules of inflammation, anti-inflammation, every time you inject including the last one?
I just want to ask a question, but let's just
in your blood. Yes, go ahead.
I want to ask Ensure. Yes. So on the nutritional deck, it talks. How do you know? How do you
find it?
No. How do you know that these? How do you know that
I'll tell you right here. I got to turn this light on. I don't know if it's going to ruin the. I got to turn my light on because it's kind of dark in here. Okay. So the first thing you do, you always look at the ingredient deck. Okay. So first ingredient is water. Okay, fine. Second ingredient, corn syrup. Okay. What the heck? Second ingredient. Third ingredient, sugar, because the corn syrup's not enough. Okay. Then the fourth, this is Ensure. This is 90% of this thing is water, corn syrup, and sugar. 95% probably. And then the fourth ingredient to make it creamy. Whenever you see something creamy, you got a fat. That's what makes things creamy, right? And by the way, I never use these kinds of fats on my skincare products. One of the worst places, one of the most egregious examples of application of these kinds of fats are in skincare products. You should never put a processed vegetable oil on your skin, but that's another story. So the fourth ingredient, blend of vegetable oils, canola and corn. All right? Forget the GMO and all that stuff. These are distorted fats. They're processed fats.
What tells you it's distorted? Because it's processed?
Yes. Okay. It has to, in order to get it into here, you got to heat it. Once you heat you can't just put the fat in there. You got to heat it. You got to process it. You got to mix it. You got to it's called emulsification. Water and oil don't mix. right? So you gotta put chemicals and crunching agents, emulsifying chemicals, and homogenization machinery to pressurize things. You may not remember this, but in the 50s and 60s, early 60s, I don't even really remember it. Milk used to separate. You have to shake it.
Mm-hmm.
The cream would rise to the top until they figured out how to crunch all the molecules really small so it would all get dispersed. But even then, after a while, it would still separate. If you leave your milk out too long, it'll separate. That process is called homogenization, where all the molecules are made the same size. They're homogenized. And so processed fats are everywhere. You're injecting them. You're giving them your babies. You're giving them to the old people. You're drinking them. And they're everywhere, because our taste buds cannot get enough fat. Every single processed food, almost every single processed food, I'm saying almost, but it probably is every single processed food, has some degree of these kinds of processed fats, which not only give you a flavor explosion in your mouth, they also help other flavors spread along your taste buds. That's why butter tastes good on everything. You never hear more butter, more better? Butter's good on everything, right? Because butter helps flavor spread. Take a green vegetable and put butter on top of it, like broccoli or cauliflower. It's irresistible. Even if you hate broccoli, you steam your broccoli, you put butter on there. It's irresistible. And then if you put a little salt on top, right? The salt, the flavor of the salt spreads all over your tongue. You see, there's all this chemistry going on, gastronomical chemistry, taste chemistry that's going on, and we're not paying attention to it. We don't learn it, and we're being manipulated by our desires, by our absolute inability to resist flavors and tastes, by economic interests that could care less about you. In fact, it's no accident that drug companies and food companies are owned by the same conglomerates, and tobacco companies for that matter, right? Okay. Because you get sick from the food, you got to take the drugs. They
hope you. But so anytime, just to recap, anytime we see an oil listed as,
unless it's like a cold pressed oil that's kept in the refrigerator in a dark bottle. Anytime you see an oil on a food, anytime you see, hang on, let me say this real quick. Anytime you see an oil in a food, in a processed food, stay away. There's nothing good at it. You're going to get
bread.
Maybe I'm missing one or two foods. I can't think of what I'm missing.
What about bread? Every time we see oil on bread.
See oil. Very rarely will you see oil in bread, unless it's a deluxe or like some kind of crafted bread, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like a connoisseur type of bread, like a gourmet bread of some kind. Most bread doesn't have oil in it. Or if it does have oil, it has trace amounts of oil, but it's not like an oily food. Your bread is not oily. Typically, there may be some oil in there, and definitely you want to stay away from it. But bread's got a whole another. Bread has got processed, not bakery bread, but even bakery bread these days can be problematic too. That's a whole nother story. But Wonder Bread and that kind of stuff, the problem with those kinds of bread is the quick release of sugar, not necessarily the oils. Although there may be, grains have oils in them too. So when you heat a grain, you may not have added oil in there, but heating the grain has oil. You know what I'm saying? So there's no added oil in there, but the grain itself is going to have some oil in it. The flour itself is going to have some oil in it. That's why they put, you'll see BHT. Ever hear of BHT?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
BHT is a very powerful antioxidant that protects your bread from going rancid, or your flour products from going rancid. They put it in cereals and breads and such. Butylated hydroxytoluene, BHT. Or BHA, they also have BHA. It's a little different.
So there's no.
And by the way, the best nutrient to protect yourself from processed fats is vitamin E. In fact, vitamin E, I add vitamin E if I ever have to make a product with a fat in it. I always add vitamin E in skincare. And vitamin E that's its job. Vitamin E is found wherever you found fat. Seeds, which are obviously going to have fat in them. Did you know seeds are where you get fat? Why would fats be in a seed, do you think?
Because it's food. I mean, you said it's a good form of energy. So
the seed needs energy. Exactly. That's why seeds are nature's rich, and nuts are one of nature's best sources of energy. And seeds are also, not accidentally, wonderful sources of natural vitamin E. That's where we get seeds. That's where we get vitamin E from, is seeds. Because wherever nature has fat, it will also have vitamin E. By the way, do you know what the richest source of vitamin E is? Sunflower seeds or sunflower oil. Because sunflowers are very rich in vitamin E. So if you want to protect yourself against these fried fats and processed fats, vitamin E, that's one of the vitamins claimed to fame, especially for the brain and the heart, which are very dependent on fat. The heart and the brain are the most mitochondrial rich, heart tissue and brain tissue are the most mitochondrial rich tissue in the body because they're moving. Remember, mitochondria are energy or, energy furnaces. They're how ATP is produced. So the heart and the brain is very dependent on fat, largely because of all the mitochondria. And also the heart and the brain are very dependent on vitamin E and essential fatty acids for that matter.
But Pharmacist Ben, you described why we like these fats, and you described some of them you described why they're bad for us. But
well, I didn't tell you all the stuff. But
in the body, what goes on? You mentioned on the mitochondrial level,
the molecules of inflammation, anti-inflammation. First of all, so
okay.
Inflammation is tightly regulated. The balance. Inflammation in a healthy system, inflammation leads to anti-inflammation. And they're very tight. You don't have too much inflammation and you don't have too much anti-inflammation. If you have too much anti-inflammation relative to inflammation, you're not going to heal because inflammation is important for healing. So you need just the right balance, and it's mostly inflammatory molecules and then anti-inflammatory molecules to put the brakes on it. But with all these fats we're getting, we've thrown off the balance. Because nature doesn't have a lot of anti-inflammatory molecules. It has a lot of inflammatory molecules. And so we're eating all these inflammatory molecules. We're throwing off the balance. And so we're dealing with all these inflammatory biochemical issues. And obviously, we've talked a lot about inflammation, maybe not enough, but inflammation is behind all chronic diseases. Secondly, every one of your cells, you have 100 trillion of these things, has a computer chip, an information processor that allows it to take information from the outside world and turn it into inside biochemistry and inside genetics. It's literally a computer chip. It's an information processor. It's a liquid. What do they call it? I forgot what they call it, but it's a semiconductor. It's a LCD. Liquid. No, what is the word I'm looking for here? I don't remember the word, but it's a semi. I don't know if you know anything about. You do know about electronics, don't you? It's a semiconductor. And whenever you have a semiconductor in nature, you have an information processor, like a chip, like a computer chip. And so every cell has a computer chip that's critically important for information processing. It's an information processor. You know what that computer chip is called? It's called your cell membrane. It's the membrane of the cell. So you got a cell, and it's wrapped around with a computer chip. That's an information processor. And here's the thing. The semiconducting nature, the information processing nature is largely dependent on fats. The cell membrane is made up of an exquisitely precise proportion of just the right amount of cholesterol and alpha linoleic acid and alpha linoleic acid and linoleic acid and phospholipids and various fats in just the right proportion. Nature is exquisite. It's perfect. And when we start pounding these fats that the cell has never seen before compared to its evolutionary history, remember, this has all changed in the last 100 years, right? I know we said this before. I'll say it again. If evolution was a clock, if our 2 million year existence was a 12-hour clock, at 1 minute to 12, at 30 seconds to 12, we completely changed the food supply. Can you picture this? Does that make sense? That analogy, right?
Absolutely.
Right? And largely around fats, as well as sugars, a lot of things. But because fats are so important, their impact is the most dramatic of all, with the exception possibly of sugar. And another factor, if you have a gallbladder problem, a liver problem, a pancreatic problem, a stomach problem, an intestinal problem, dysbiosis, that's going to further throw off your fats. Oh, and another problem. One of the most pro-inflammatory molecules that gets into the blood, all disease is cell disease, but all cell disease is preceded by dirty blood, toxemia, blood toxicity, all disease. One of the most powerful blood toxin, no surprise, is a combination of fat and sugar. It's called an LPS, a lipopolysaccharide. And these LPSs come from bacteria. They're particles of bacteria. They get into the blood. They're technically called endotoxins. If you're a fancy schmancy biochemist, you'll call them an endotoxin. And these LPSs are lipid, fat, and sugar, polysaccharide, lipopolysaccharides. LPSs are, if you want to experiment in a laboratory and cause a disease, you give the animal an LPS. You inject them with an LPS. If you want to cause a disease, LPSs are used to cause disease. And when they want to test drugs and such, they'll inject the animal with an LPS. When you have this condition of dysbiosis, among many other problems of toxic blood, possibly the most problematic is the entrance of these toxic fats into the bloodstream. And that's on top of all the other fats that we're getting through the diet. And that's on top of having a gallbladder taken out, or having a gallbladder problem where you're not processing fats, or having a bile issue or a liver issue. You can see where this thing can tumble out of control, which is why you have to focus on foods. I'm not a food guy. I know I say it all the time. I really want people to understand, because when we hear about food, we turn off. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to know that French fries are bad. I love my French fries. I don't want to hear that they're bad. Try talking to somebody, one of your friends, when they're eating French fries, and tell them how terrible it is. See how that goes over. Right? They don't want to hear it. Shut up, AJ. You're a downer. I'm eating my fries here. And I'm picking on fries, but it could be anything. Chips, fries. Do you know the biggest companies in the world are chip companies? Keebler and Nabisco and Frito-Lay, and biggest companies in the world make chips. Why is that? Why is that? Because not only is there an irresistible demand, an endless demand for them, but they're so cheap to supply.
You can eat them daily. A good profit. I hear you.
Incredible profit margin on it, which is why I'm saying these guys are not our friends. Mm-hmm. They're not our friends.
Okay, Pharmacist Ben.
Yes, sir.
When I think of people who eat fried foods, I have an image in my mind of a large person, very rotund. Okay, what is going on here?
It's not true. When you say that again, you could be skinny and have your fat system thrown off too. But because it's visceral fat that you don't see. You don't see visceral fat.
But
I don't look like a fat guy. You're not a fat guy. I'm looking at you. I mean, I've actually never seen your whole form, but you're not a fat guy, right? I'm assuming. Am I wrong?
I'm fat.
You don't appear to be fat. Appear to be fat.
I'm fat.
But where your fat is inside, not, like body fat, like this kind of stuff, but the visceral fat around your organs. We don't see that. This visceral fat, that's really the problem. We don't see visceral fat. It's there, or you don't. We can assume it's there, but visceral fat is not the kind of fat most people think of when they think of fat. So you can have a skinny person who appears to be skinny but still has a fat issue.
Okay, I'm talking about the person that eats at Popeyes, eats at Bojangles, eats at KFC, eats at McDonald's. In the supermarket, the cart's full of Fruity Pebbles and
I get that.
Pebbles and they've got Sunny D and sweet tea.
All right. So what's the question? I get what you're saying.
What's going on? How are they going to recover?
Okay, that's an excellent question. First of all, the more of that stuff you're doing, the more of the Mighty 90 you need. That's our perfect longevity customer right there. If they're serious about being healthy, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, if you disagree, that some people have a death wish. They won't admit it, but they're not happy. They're somehow missing something in their life. And they don't want to, That's the only thing. That's the only way I can see it, because otherwise I ask myself that same question. In cell biology, there's a phenomena called apoptosis. Have you heard of this term?
Only from you.
Okay, apoptosis is cell suicide. Cells will literally commit suicide. They have a self-destruct program. When the biochemistry of the cell, the pH and the hydration level and the enzyme quality and content and the integrity of the little substructures and so on, when all those things start to break down or become defective or don't operate efficiently enough, there's literally genetic programming that will cause the cell to explode. Do you remember Mission Impossible? This tape will self-destruct. And did you ever see that? This tape, I used to get a kick out of that.
Yeah, every Sunday
night. This tape will self-destruct in 10 seconds. That's how a cell is. It will self-destruct. Apoptosis. But here's the thing. And I don't want to offend anybody here, because sometimes people get offended when I say this, but hey, it's just chemistry, biology. There's a phenomena called phenoptosis. P-H-E-N. Phen. Phen means organism. Apoptosis refers to a cell. Phenoptosis refers to an organism. It's literally a phenomenon. I'm not making this up. It's called phenoptosis. And that's when the organism will feel like it's defective and it will kill itself. Now, I believe, and this is where it becomes maybe not politically correct to say, hopefully I don't offend anybody, but I believe that's what's going on when people say, oh, I'm just going to smoke this cigarette. It's not going to bother me. Or I'm going to go to Popeyes. I like Popeyes. Or, I hear smart people say this all the time. Hear physicians say it. Did I tell you the story about when I was working in the neonatal ICU and ped ICU? I forgot if I told it to you or I told somebody.
Oh, and it's smoking.
I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe in there. It was the hospital. They had, every hospital had a vending machine with cigarettes. To this day, they got vending machines with Snickers, and they don't have cigarettes anymore, but they got Snickers bars and everything else. Why? Why are we like this? Why is the culture like this? I believe when people say that, they don't want to. I would never do it. I mean, I want to be here. I want to live a long, strong, powerful life. Do you?
So yes, you think so? You think it's slow, Harry Carey?
Slow, Harry Carey. I mean, whether it's intentional or not, I don't think it's intentional, but that's the effect.
Okay, but what about the fact that just some people just don't know any better?
Now that's different. If you don't know any better, then that's why we're here. If you don't know any better, me and AJ are here pretty much once a week or twice a week. We do Daily with Doc. Okay, I do tons of presentations. I've got YouTube everywhere.
What about the people that know better and we want to help them too?
Yeah, people who know better are they're on the call today. They're our family. People who know better, whether they're doing it or not, is different. Sometimes you know better, but you do it anyway. That's different. But people who know better, they're in longevity or something like longevity, or they're participating. Some people are participating, and you know what, AJ, and everybody out there listening, I think there's a kind of awakening happening in a lot of ways. There's a lot of bad information that's out there for sure, but there's a lot of good stuff too. I mean, I remember I was always obsessed, not always, but most of my adult life, I've been obsessed with self-help and research and learning things. And I remember all the things I had to do to learn something or to get self-help. I'd have to go to the library and get cassette tapes and then record the cassette tapes on one of these little boom boxes with two cassettes. You remember these things? They had two cassettes on each side and you put one. I remember going to the library and I'd get cassette tapes and I'd have to put these two things together and so I could have it and listen to it. Or I go park my car and have to do research and get stacks of stuff that I have to photocopy for a dime each and have to get, $10 in dimes and start photocopying with a photocopy machine. And then I go out and there'd be a parking ticket on my car because I was there for too long. And today, boom, I got everything. I got where is this? I got the entire world's wisdom right here, So to me, that's definitely a problem. There's problems associated with all that, but there's so much out there. There's so much good stuff out there. There's amazing stuff out there. There's amazing information, research. For a guy like me who likes to research, holy moly, I'm not kidding you, AJ. I learn 10 or 20 new things that I didn't know before every day. and it piles on. And I'm not any better. I'm not any smarter than anybody. Anybody can do it. That's why, people think I'm smart. I am not that smart. I'm just curious. I'm interested. I like you. Anybody can do this. I didn't invent anything. I'm not Albert Einstein. I'm nothing. I just read and I'm curious. I'm interested. And for anybody who is, there's so much out there now. And a lot of it is not good. And you got to weed through it. And you got to use discretion and discernment. You got to wield your knife to cut through the BS. And, I've dedicated my life to truth. And that's why I call my company Truth. I want everybody to hear the real deal. Unfortunately, not everybody's like that. And even me, it's hard not to have your own predispositions. So all information is going to be colored with a predisposition of the person who presented that information. So use your own wisdom, use your own discretion. We got to all participate in our own health. Listen, this model of going outside ourselves to take care of our health doesn't work. The only people that benefit are the people who are charging us for the service. This is what longevity is all about, by the way. The things longevity is selling are part of your body. They're integrated. It's not about us. It's about you. The Healthy Start Pack doesn't work because of me. It works because of you. It doesn't work because of longevity. It works because of the biochemistry of the body. You follow me?
Yes.
That's not what the other side is saying, what the medical model is saying. They're saying, hey, we made this molecule better. You want high blood pressure? Your body's got high blood pressure? We'll take care of that. Watch what we do with our beta blocker, our calcium channel blocker. They'll even take a nutrient like an omega-3 fatty acid, for example. I forgot what they call it. They turned it into a drug. They tweaked the molecule and they turned it into a drug. And it's an omega-3 fatty acid that you get in your ultimate EFAs. Same thing. Not the same thing. An inferior version. But they have studies. They did the studies and a patent. Right, exactly. And they sell it as a drug and it's a control. This is what the present. This is the philosophy. It's controlled. It's tight.
Okay.
We know how we're making it. Every molecule is standardized. It's perfect. Go ahead. Sorry.
Question for you. What's that vitamin E going to do in
vitamin
our body?
E is nature's way of protecting fats. Anything fatty, it's called antioxidation, and it works in this fabulously, incredibly elegant quantum electronic process where electrons are contributed to something that's oxidized. Real quick, we should probably talk about antioxidants. You hear about antioxidants all the time, right? So fats, the reason fats are so important is they got lots of energy, right? That energy is represented by something called an electron. Now, I hesitate to use that word because sometimes people tune out, but just think of a piece of electricity. Energy is electricity. They're synonymous for the most part, right? For our purposes, they're synonymous. Is this making sense? I don't want to get into too.
No, I'm listening.
Are you okay with you think this is too much for folks? I don't want to get into too much.
No,
right.
Our folks want to hear what you have to say.
They want to hear. Okay, good. All right. So, the reason fats are important is because of energy. The energy is represented by electricity. The electricity comes in pieces called electrons. So far, so good?
Yes.
All right. Electrons can be bumped off. When an electron is bumped off of something, it creates a hole, an opening, right? So you can think of holes and things filling the holes. That's all anything is, really. Just holes and things filling the holes on every level. In terms of quantum and electricity, it's all about holes and emptiness, empty holes and filled holes. When you have check this out. This is super cool. When you have an empty hole, nature abhors a vacuum. Nature doesn't like empty, so it'll fill. But now you have an empty here, right? Make sense?
Yes.
So nature will fill that. Now you have an empty here, and nature will fill that. And now you have an empty. You see what's happening?
Making a chain. Okay.
Make a chain, right? But what's the net effect of the chain? A stream, a flow. That's how electricity happens. You follow me? It's the movement of creating holes and filling the holes, and holes and filling the holes. So far, so good?
Yes.
This movement, this action is extremely fundamental for everything. This is really what biochemistry and really quantum biochemistry is about. It's about holes and filling of the holes. And this endless process of holes being filled and then holes being filled and holes being filled creates a stream. And that's all electricity is. That's a current. That's an electrical current. With me so far?
Yes.
So, by the way, do you think we'll ever run out of this energy? No, it's recycled. It's constantly recycled. And where does it all come from?
The sun?
Bingo. Bingo. Everything comes from the sun. Why? Because the sun is streaming out pieces of light. What are pieces of light called? Photons. Right? The sun is constantly streaming out photons. And magic of all magic, there are substances in the world that can take that light, those photons, and turn them into electrons. You with me?
Yes.
So there's an endless supply of electrons because there's an endless supply of photons. By the way, what is it that turns the photons into electrons? Plants. That's called photosynthesis. That's what plants do. They take the sun and they turn it into stuff. Photons are invisible, massless. I think they're probably invisible. They're massless. They're really, I don't even know what the hell they are, really. We come right down to it. But they get turned into electrons. They get turned into substance by a plant. That's magic. Take nothing and turn it into something. So anyway, you have this endless stream of boom, 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 holes being filled by things, and then holes being created by the things that left, and more holes being filled. You follow that logic, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What does it have to do with oxidation? Is this too much?
No, I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Okay. So,
at the edge of my seat.
This process of creating holes is very important. It has to be controlled. You don't want to have holes everywhere. It has to be in a stream. It has to be controlled. But there are things in nature that are very powerful and have an ability to knock off electrons, throwing this chain off. So you don't have this chain anymore. Boom, boom, boom. Now it's thrown off. It's gone crazy. You have holes being created willy-nilly. Now, holes don't like to be holes. Nature abhors a vacuum. Nature will always seek to fill those holes. And so these holes will look for places where they can find pieces of electricity. Wherever there's rich sources of electricity or electrons, pieces of electricity, these holes will seek them out. That whole process I just described to you is what oxidation and antioxidation is all about. You see, the main cause of creation of holes inadvertently, and actually intentionally too, but inadvertently, is oxygen. Oxygen has a very powerful ability to knock off pieces of electricity, electrons, to create holes. Oxygen creates holes. That's called oxidation. Oxidation is the creation of holes where should be controlled. Is this making sense? Because
yes,
I'm giving you,
dude,
I'm giving you some deep quantum chemistry here.
We can handle it. Come on, bring it on, bring it on.
I mean, I'm like using analogies and stuff, but this is really pretty powerful quantum chemistry that we're talking about here, right? So you got these holes being created, right? And oxygen's knocking off these electrons, you're creating the holes. So these holes, nature abhors a vacuum. It doesn't want holes. So the holes are looking around. Where can I scarf an electron to fill me up, right? And there are certain sources in biology that are very rich sources of electricity, electrons. And these holes, which, by the way, the technical name for these holes, or the molecules with the holes, are free radicals. This is what a free radical is. You've heard the term, right?
Yes.
A free radical is a molecule that's got holes. And it's looking around for a place to steal. Two of the richest sources of electricity in a cell, or in biology, are the cell membrane, which is covered with electronic energy, with pieces of electrons, electrical energy, covered with it, coated with electrical. So it's a rich source. And cell membranes are very susceptible to having stuff stolen from them, having pieces of electricity stolen from them. When that happens, the cell membrane becomes disturbed. The cell membrane becomes oxidized. Are you with? Making sense? I can't tell. All right. The second rich source of electrical energy is the DNA, the genetics. These are two of the richest sources of electricity, and these are the two of the most susceptible parts of the cell to oxidation, to having things stolen from them. Now, keep in mind, when you steal an electron so you could be filled, you've now created another free radical. You with me? You've created a disturbed and distorted fat, or a disturbed and distorted molecule, because fats are so rich in pieces of electricity. Remember, they're high sources of energy. They're the most susceptible tissues in the body, or structures in the body, to oxidation. The cell membrane is rich in fats. The cell membrane is very susceptible to oxidation. Any fat is going to be susceptible to oxidation because fats are so rich in electrical energy. Are you with me?
Yes.
Seriously, you understand? This makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. The technical word for oxidized fat is rancidity. When you have an oxidized fat, you have a rancid fat. Now, you asked me a question. This is all a digression or a background to the question you asked. What does vitamin E do? Why is vitamin E protected? That was your question a long time ago, right? So, in nature, God is good. So in nature, there are molecules that have a loose electron and that can contribute that electron, or donate is the technical term. They're donors. They can donate a piece of their electron. They're generous. They have an extra, not an extra, but a little loose connection to their. It's kind of like a guy who's got a little extra money in his pocket, so he can contribute a little bit. We call these molecules that can contribute or donate to fill a hole, right? So you got a hole. Does this make sense? You got a hole here, and then you got this molecule that says, hey, oh, you poor guy, here you go. Here, take mine. I'll be okay. Take mine. We call those molecules antioxidants. Oxidation is a hole being created. Antioxidation is a generous molecule that has a loose connection to its own electron and can get rid of it. Now, if you're thinking ahead, you'll say, well, now that antioxidant is a free radical. It has a hole in it now because it gave it up, and that is true. So you have to have another antioxidant for that antioxidant, and then another antioxidant for that antioxidant, because you're creating holes. Nature doesn't want holes. So an antioxidant becomes a pro-oxidant after it gives up its electron, after it gives up its piece. Did I lose you there?
No, but my question is, the antioxidant is never becomes stabilized. The amount of electrons and protons and the electrons.
No protons. Don't
stable.
be messing up the equation
Okay.
here. We don't want to talk about protons.
The electrons are outside.
Yes.
What's inside, and so it's not balanced. The vitamin E is not balanced because it gave away the electron.
Yes. It's not that it's not balanced. Remember, it's all fills and holes. Fills and holes. When I say fill, I mean something's in the hole. Everything's just fills and holes. All of life is fills and holes. 0 and 1. If you're a computer guy, it's 0 and 1. If you're a biologist, you call it 1. You call it fills and holes. That's everything. That's all of life is fills and holes. The holes always want to be filled, creating another hole, which has to be filled, creating another hole, which has to be filled ad infinitum. Goes on forever. And that's where you get the chain. When the antioxidant gives up now it has a hole. It needs to be filled itself, and another antioxidant comes. And this is why you want a stream of antioxidants in your system, and all different kinds. You want to endlessly be ingesting antioxidants.
So why is E better than C in this case?
Well, hang on. Let me tell you. Let me talk about E, okay? And E and C, because that's what the question was. E. I just wanted you to get the sense, the idea of oxidation, antioxidant. Okay. So E is important because it has a very loose electron specifically for fats. E is fat. E is a fatty molecule. It's found in fats. So E is nature's way of contributing or donating electrons to holes in fats, because fats are susceptible to holes. Fats are very susceptible to having holes because they got lots of energy. They have this current that we're talking about is very well developed in fats. This is what makes fats so valuable. So they're very prone towards creating holes, especially in the presence of oxygen, because oxygen is the prime. It's the prime not a stealer of electrons. That's what oxidation is about. They call it stealing electrons. Now, what I'm talking about here, by the way, let me think in my head real quick, because I want to tell you something here. There's a couple things I want to tell you. I have all these thoughts in my head that I want to tell you. Another thing that oxidizes is light. That's called photooxidation. Have you heard that term? Photooxidation is oxidation by light. There's lots of things in nature that can oxidize. Fluoride, chlorine. These are powerful oxidizing agents. And these oxidizing, fluoride, chlorine, and the sun and oxygen wreak havoc in nature because they steal electrons. That's what they call it. They steal electrons. So the process of creating holes and filling those holes is all of life. And technically, this is really cool. Technically, stealing or creating holes is called oxidation. Filling holes is called reduction. Have you heard that term? Mm. Okay, reduction is the filling of holes. These are chemical terms, or physical chemistry. This is called physical chemistry, by the way, PChem. Reduction is the filling of holes. Oxidation is the creation of holes. And this chain of filling and creating holes and filling the holes and creating holes is called reduction oxidation. Or you'll hear the term redox. Have you heard the term redox? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is what redox is. Redox is everything. Reduction oxidation is everything. Holes, filling the holes. Holes, filling the holes. Oh, shoot.
You got another call?
No, I forgot I had an event.
Uh-oh.
Hang on. I totally forgot. Marianne, I totally forgot you. I totally forgot this event. Can I get there? Can I get there in half an hour? I totally. The parking lot's packed.
Tell them to get valet.
Can you ring it for? Can you? What? Can you ring? Can you wing it for half an hour? Text me the address. I'll be there in half an hour. I'm all dressed even. Okay. See you soon. Okay, bye. I totally forgot I had an event with a friend of mine.
Pharmacist Ben, you gotta go. It's so messed up because I wanted to keep you for another half an hour. But can you put a bow on it in 30 seconds?
I am a dummy. Actually,
everybody loves you, man. And that's what they're saying in here. I guess we'll have to pick this up on Daily